Hi, Aurelia. Do you want to hear a story?
Sure.
So, let me tell you about the time when my whole family, not just like my mom and my dad and my sister, my entire family got into a huge debate.
Oh, wow.
So, my grandparents and most of my extended family live in India. So, a couple years ago, we were visiting them, and everyone came into my grandparents' house, and they were all just, having fun. But then, eventually, as what happens with adults is, the conversation became politics based. So everyone started talking about politics. And another thing that you can expect when a lot of adults talk is that not everyone is going to agree on one thing.
Yeah.
So I think this time in particular, they were talking about like the election and like the electoral college and whatnot, because I remember in 2016 how the popular vote and the electoral college didn't exactly line up. So they were getting into a big debate about that. And so like half the people said, oh yeah, it's fine, but because this is more accurate representation. But the other half said, oh, well, the people didn't vote for that. And there's gone to a really big debate, and I was kind of just like, me and my sister were just kind of just sitting there and just thinking, I wish we could just leave right now and just never talk about this. It's really awkward because you can't really say anything.
Well, seems like a interesting debate.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we have Tessa Cook here from the Party Politics Elective. I have Charlotte Reves here with me. So Tessa, tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm in the 8th grade. I'm in party politics.
So Charlotte, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So this year I am in Mr. Kent's party politics class, where we've been just studying some of the different things that go into an election, how that's decided, and some different things about how it might be unfair for certain people.
What values do you think are more important to the Democratic Party?
So this year is a really big year with the whole coronavirus going on. So I think that's a big issue that's present in both of the parties. Also, the Affordable Care Act is something that the Democrats, I think, find really important this year. And yeah, so.
Okay, same with the Republican. What values do you think are more important to them?
Yeah, so once again, coronavirus, of course, is very important. Also, we have the Senate seat that was just filled. And so I think some of those issues are also very, up in the air, and people are talking about those too.
How do you think the two candidates did in the first debate?
It was really funny. We watched it as a family and we were just laughing the entire time. But it was also really scary. The first debate, both candidates kind of didn't behave entirely presidential, especially Donald Trump, but both of them were interrupting each other.
Do you think there was any way like the moderator could have done any better to like help keep more control?
It was definitely pretty chaotic. I think just really asking the next question, because I think they waited a little bit, but this is a tough job to have.
Yeah. So how do you think Joe Biden could have better like prepared, or how do you think it could have done better in the election?
I think that as frustrating as it can be to be on the stage with Donald Trump, you just need to not react to him sometimes. Like, you need to be the person who isn't interrupting. I know that he didn't do that much, but if there were a couple times where he did.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for coming to this interview.
Thank you for having me.
And we're back with this episode's edition of Hive Minds.
Since we're talking about the elections, today we'll be doing a mini debate.
To many people at Keeling, the schedule change that happened on November 2nd is still on the minds.
So, for our debate, the topic of interest will be just that.
What's that?
The school schedule.
Oh, right.
Well, let's get to it.
In the theme of the 2020 election, we'll be hosting a speed debate about the new November schedule changes. Our first debate topic is longer versus shorter lunches. For our longer lunches, we have Aurelia and Anne, and for our shorter lunches, we have Naaman and Sankarshan. Aurelia and Anne have 20 seconds to make an argument. After counter arguments, I'll decide who made the better point.
Yeah, so I think that you need enough time to eat, and you also need time to catch up on your work, because this is like the perfect time to.
Yeah, so adding on what Anne said, most people, they get their work done during 90-minute lunches, and so they don't have any asynchronous work after.
I feel like shorter lunches are better because people will goof off more with the longer lunches, and when the more asynchronous time you have, the more time you're gonna spend like 3/4 of it playing, and the only 1/4 and keep it in the last minute every asynchronous work that you have due. So I feel like shorter lunches are better.
Okay, it is now time for me to decide who the winner is, and I think that Naaman and Sankarshan
Yes.
have defended the point
Yes.
best. So they win that round. We're now going to be moving on to Friday asynchronous days. So for keeping the Friday asynchronous days, we have Anne and we have Naaman. And for defending the new synchronous Fridays, we have Sankarshan and Aurelia.
I think that asynchronous Fridays were a perfect day to just get everything done, and it was the perfect day where almost all of the teachers had office hours, so you could go there for help.
Yeah, I think that the two big issues with this schedule change is that they made lunch shorter, so we have less time to work on that. They made classes longer, so we have less time out of school. And they got rid of asynchronous Fridays, which is when most kids would actually have time to finish their work.
Okay. So I think that asynchronous Fridays are good, but now that people are going back to school and they need to be at school, what are they going to do on asynchronous Fridays if they don't have any Zoom calls? They're just going to sit there.
Another thing I have is that too much people like they're like not taking it seriously, because over statistics it's seen that most of the students are not going to office hours at all.
Okay, that is the end of round 2, synchronous versus asynchronous Fridays. And I have decided that Naaman and Anne have defended the point best. And that's because I think, well, I don't have any reason specific. I think in general, they defended it better. It's now time to move on to round 3. This does not involve any more or any less class time. This is to do with advisory. So advisory is now at the end of the day. So defending advisory being in the morning, we have Sankarshan and Naaman. And then defending advisory being at the end of the day, we have Anne and Aurelia.
Okay, well, in a lot of colleges, so this that whenever you learn in the morning, your mind uses that, so it puts it in your mind and it gets stuck in the long-term memory. While in the end of the day, you're just tired, it's too much for you, and you won't care about what's happening in advisory, nothing important announcement, you won't hear it at all.
So
I think that you have your A1 class before advisory usually, but what if you have a question about that A1 class? So if I had a question about math, I could get advisory at the end of the day, so I'd be ready for all of my core classes the next day.
yeah, so many people, they like their advisory class, and so they start out the day good, but they just don't have the drive to get through the end of the day.
All right, so that is the end of the entire debate. But before we conclude the debate, I'd like to announce the winners of round 3, which is going to be Naaman and Sankarshan. Because I really, I'm sure there's statistics to back up advisory in the afternoon, but I really like the use of statistics for their argument. That concludes the end of the Hive Mind debate. we're excited to see who's going to win the 2020 election. And thank you for watching Hive Mind.
So when I say the word election, okay, what does it mean to you?
Oh, it means a freedom of one of the freedoms of our country to be able to elect your representatives and the president at certain times during the year.
Yeah, I see. Now, how do you feel about this? Like, like this is all this election thing that happens every 4 years, all right? And how do you feel about this? Are you excited? Are you happy that this is happening? Or like, how do you feel?
Well, I'm a little anxious. I think so many people are. It's been one of the more divisive election terms that I've ever experienced. I think at age 60 that I've never seen a country this divisive. And so people that lean more either conservative or liberal progressive are a little bit more polarized than I've ever seen before. I'll be ready for the election to be over.
We've almost reached the end of today's program about the election. Let's take a look back and think about what we've learned.
We learned that kids have better manners during a debate.
We also learned that when you get a bunch of adults together, they tend to argue.
And kids can get caught in the crossfire.
And lastly, we learned that the election causes friction among our country.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Well, that concludes today's episode. This has been Aurelia Byman
And Naaman Mishra.
Thanks for joining us today on
The Hive.
The Hive.